Give us 30 minutes each week to discover the trends that are shaping the future of retirement with That Annuity Show. We bring you conversations with industry leaders who are revolutionizing financial products, technology, and distribution channels. Now, here's your host, Paul Tyler.
Hi, this is Paul Tyler, and welcome back to another special episode of That Annuity Show. In fact, it's part two of one we started earlier. Ramsey, you're on the other side of the table along with Graham. You have been co-host, now you're a guest. And our plan is to continue our discussion about a really rapidly emerging topic for a lot of carriers. What do we do about this in-plan annuity opportunity, right?
Absolutely. So, thanks. It's great to be a guest on the show that I've co-hosted 200 and some odd times, and great to be back with my business partner, Graham Clark. Just as a quick review, we've been working over the last several years on our company, on our product offering, and really I'll call it a platform, which is Alex Income. And essentially the idea is to bridge the gap between the Social Security and put more appropriately, the pension plan that our parents and grandparents have. We all still have Social Security, thank goodness. But the pension plan our parents and grandparents had, and the 401k, which is now sort of the centerpiece of most retirement plans, and is a fine start, but essentially is a supplemental savings plan that's actually grown into something more than it was ever designed for. And so what we're doing is we're creating the opportunity to bring guaranteed income into the 401k in a way that brings guaranteed income to the broadest possible target audience. And our view is the revolution is in the workplace.
The revolution is in the workplace. That's actually good. I think that's the title right there. Revolution is in the workplace. Graham, great to have you back as well.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Yeah. So we're actually going to do a little bit of a role play because I've actually had this conversation, Graham and Ramsey, with a few people, which is to say, wait, in-plan annuities, huh? I'm an insurance carrier. This is something I should be looking at. So let me just sort of take I'm going to take that role on today and say, let's imagine I'm an annuity carrier. I'm in the retail annuity space. I've been modestly successful. I've got a handful of fixed annuities. Maybe I'm in the RILA space. Maybe I have a MIGA or two. And I've got my product development team looking at this opportunity. Like, first of all, is this something that I should be thinking about now, or should I be putting this off until my 2026 planning cycle?
So I'm going to make a comment. So one of the hats I wear is as a board member of a fairly large life insurance company, and I can tell you that certainly at the board level, all plans should look out much further than 1 year, right? So, there's always a 1 year plan, but there's usually a 3 to 5 year plan that's part of the process as well. And, from our perspective, it should be part of everybody's longer term plan. Where longer term is, 3 to 5 and then on to 10 years. Even if the strategy is, well, we're going to operate on a slow burn and stay posted as to what's going on, and then figure out how we'll implement when the timing is right. But this is not a complete wait and see. The early movers will get too far ahead of you if you're too passive. So, in my view, everybody in the life and annuity space should be working with somebody like us if they don't have the resources internally. Working with someone like us to really figure out what is the right approach, what is the right strategy for my insurance company in the in-plan space. And the answer is different for every company, but it's a very important question to ask.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think you position it well. Although we're living in a what did you do for me, today world, which fortunately is happening in a lot of different sectors of the economy. Graham, now you're an actuary. Now, my experience,
I'm actually not an actuary.
Oh, you're not? I thought you were.
Can I answer your previous question
absolutely.
a little bit more bluntly, which is my style? If you're in the retail annuity space, you're competing against 45 or 50 carriers, generally on price. Your rates are available. I can go on Blueprint Income and see them. You have distribution costs and commissions, and you have admin costs, et cetera. And meanwhile, in the 401k space, the asset pool as of the end of last year was $8.9 trillion in assets, $8.9 trillion. Right now, less than 1% of plans have an in-plan annuity product, which is like a target date fund that has an annuity in it or rolls into annuity, this is what we're talking about. The distribution cost, there's no commission. And because it's generally a group product, it's more profitable. And firms like BlackRock and State Street and Empower, Nuveen/Teachers are in it. They're trying to distribute annuities. So if you're currently going through retail distribution of annuities, that's fine. But BlackRock's trying to distribute annuities effectively. They have $2 trillion of assets under management. They've got a lot of resource. You don't want to ignore that that's going on, because if they're successful, if Nuveen Teachers is successful and they're showing success, then this is going to happen, and you're going to want to be distributing in this space.
Well, okay, and Ramsey, you mentioned people. Obviously, you need some people to sort of find the opportunity and plan it out. How do I know? Like, if I look at the skills I currently have inside an organization, what makes it quicker? If I've got. Is it certain actuarial skills to do this? Is it marketing skills? Is it connections in a brokerage, in the brokerage market? What are the three or four or five things I need to say I'm going to be a serious competitor in the near term?
So, it's a great question, and there are a number of things. One is understanding the market. So, Graham and I spent a lot of years at a number of large investment banks, working with life insurance companies, helping them hedge their variable annuity and FIA and other risks. And so we came into this with actually, a fairly, I'd say, a very strong understanding of the annuity side of it, right? And what it meant for the carriers from a risk management perspective. And we also have exposure on the distribution side as well in terms of our experience set. So we had a sense for that. But 401ks are different. 401ks involve a whole ecosystem. So you've got one or more asset managers. You've got people that play fiduciary roles. You've got technology players like Mycruity, who's been a guest on the show. You've got record keepers. So a lot of understanding how to navigate this is one understanding, like, what are all the parts you need to bring together to actually make this work? So you need to have somebody that knows how to do that. The next piece, once you get all that together, is going to be to figure out, well, how do I go about distributing this? And so, that's going to mean having discussions with plan sponsors, right? And understanding like who the decision maker at the plan sponsor is. So, for traditional DB plans, that might be a CIO, but for a DC plan, it may be a CHRO. Is there a trustee committee? How do you communicate with them? If they're a larger plan, are they working with one of the major consulting firms? Chances probably yes. So how do you communicate with them? So it's very much understanding the product, the ecosystem, and the distribution channel, and how the distribution channel might be different for large plans than it might be for sort of small and medium sized plans. So there's a lot and that's just scratching the surface. And we've spent the last 3 years decoding all of this so that we can understand the best way to help any carrier decide how to approach the market.
Yeah, well, I was working at a very large company. A lot of that back in sort of the early 2000s decided to go into make a very large push into third party distribution. It was an interesting process. We were successful for a very long time. But there were a number of different vectors, to build relationships in with these other institutions. Some of them look more like almost like an institutional GIC type of arrangement, where we're almost running our balance sheet to some of these companies to sort of put their own wrapper. Others look more like a retail wholesale. Look, here's our product, take it, put it in there. Maybe both of you could walk me through. So fine, I've hired all you. You did a great job. You gave me a plan. I've hired my distribution people. Now I'm trying to lay out my product strategy. What are the options here? What are the choices I have to make?
Well, I'll start, and then I'll hand it over to Graham. One big thing is really being thoughtful about what your strengths are. So, and like if you're an asset manager that specializes in fixed income, then you're going to come up with a strategy that kind of allows you to shine in that particular sphere. And then you're going to look for partners that essentially like fill in the other gaps you potentially have. So, coming up with the right product design is a pretty important element of this, right? One, in terms of like how it reflects who you are, but also how it's going to ultimately end up reflecting your target audience. And for us, we came up with a very simple design because we wanted everybody to be able to write it, right? We weren't looking for something that was different because the need is so large. We need a product that everybody can write. It should be in some sense a commodity in that sense, like the S&P 500, right? So we want to be for this space with the S&P 500 and say like a Vanguard are for equity investing.
So,
go ahead, Graham.
I do. I think, and Ramsey, it's interesting, right? It depends who I am. I think if I've got a strong, asset management group, it could be one set of partnerships. If I'm much stronger on the product and the asset liability matching part, would be a different direction. Graham, tell me how do I think about it?
So each of these products, these 401k guaranteed in-plan annuity products, tend to be, it's like an automobile. An automobile has an engine, a chassis, tires, a drive shaft, some axles, and a steering wheel, and a windshield. These products, you're going to have an asset manager or asset managers, a glide path manager who are running the target date fund. You're also going to need an insurance carrier or carriers, and a couple of other service providers, like for integration of transferring data, calculation, and UX. You have to know what roles that you can play. If you're an insurance carrier, well, that's your role. But there are insurance carriers that also, like New Teachers, owns an asset manager. So they play all of those roles. Asset managers play the asset manager and the glide path role, and you have to recruit the other parties. So you have to know what you can do and what else you need. And then you have to build. These are the term in 401k world is co-manufactured. This is a product that's manufactured across insurance and asset management and a couple of other sectors. And our business model is to help people put that together. So if you're an insurance company, we'll help you get the other pieces together. If you're an asset manager, we'll teach you how the annuities works, what's the best annuity design, and help you gather those other pieces. And generally, in the product, and I was on a webinar last week, I think, with another a market firm. They said there's probably 30 products now that have been launched in the last 4 years in this space. And so you had to know how all those products works, how to classify them. That's what we do. That's what we've done.
Okay. And Ramsey, I know you did this CanX paper. Maybe talk to us about the framework you set out and kind of where it led you, the two of you.
So one of the things that we discovered very quickly as we talked to lots of different players in the market, saw what was out there, is that there were a lot of different solutions. Again, they reflect everybody's preferences and business strategy, but there weren't really easy ways to compare the performance of one versus the other. So, we came up with, I'll call it sort of 5 key comparison points. And we also said, okay, well, what are the various solutions that people use to approach retirement income? So one of them is you save your money in your 401k, and at retirement, you buy an immediate annuity. So that's actually a very common solution. It's commonly available. It's not utilized as often as it should be, because a lot of people will just take the lump sum and go.
Okay, and let me just ask you, as a participant, okay, if I'm selling a product through here, mm-hmm. Who makes that decision? Is that the participant, or is it the plan that sets this up?
Participant makes that decision. Okay. Yeah, that's a participant decision.
And they don't do it very much at all. And they can do that in the retail annuity market, right? And people can roll out of their 401k and buy a SPIA. Not much that happens. And there are a couple of platforms that are in the market, Fidelity, Hewler, where they can do that inside their 401k and get institutional prices. but the take up is not huge. But that is the base case.
Yeah.
Sorry,
That's the first one. The other one is one that we've talked about here a lot, which is essentially the 4% rule. So systematic withdrawal. We had William and Bengen, the father of the 4% rule, on a couple of years ago. Hope to have him on again in 2025.
Oh yeah, and even he doesn't really talk about the 4% rule. It's a lot more complicated than that.
But it's a very common solution. And then we created a stylized solution based on an FIA platform, which looks like one of the peer offerings in the market. And then we did another one that's based on a living benefit. It's a sort of variable annuity style structure that looks like yet another sort of offering that's in the market.
Okay, so just for a second, like if in this fixed annuity, would this be like you're assuming that I have retail fixed index annuities and I'm going to put something like that with the riders, with the withdrawal features inside a plan? Is that kind of a clone of a clone fitting inside of a 401k?
It's not a perfect clone, but it's inspired by, yes.
Okay.
So there's a product in the marketplace. It's a target date fund structure that starts allocating money to an FIA for living benefit. That product exists in the market, and we essentially reversed engineered that.
So the critical piece that we haven't really touched on yet, and this is super important, is that the delivery method is through a target date fund, right? So target date funds, right, and we had a target date manager on with us an episode or two ago, but a target date fund typically is an allocation to stocks and bonds based on your age, and as you get older, it's more bonds and less stocks, and it is the dominant strategy, the dominant weapon of choice in the 401k space. And very importantly, it's usually the default strategy. So if I'm a plan participant, I sign up for my plan and I'm paying out, a few $100s per paycheck into my retirement plan. Unless I choose a different strategy, the one they're going to put me in automatically is a target date fund. And and the reality is most people just take what the default is and they don't switch. So if you want to have a meaningful footprint in the 401k space, you really actually want to be part of the strategy that everybody gets defaulted into, as opposed to being in a strategy where you're trying to draw everybody away from that default. And so very early on, again, this goes back to what I was saying about as a 401, in terms of the expertise we had to gain, we sort of learned very quickly we had to create something that would be viable as part of the default, right? And if you want to be part of the default, you want to be delivered within a target date fund, because that is the historic pattern. And then the question is, well, what is your footprint within that target date asset allocation? And fundamentally for us, we thought, well, okay, like the annuities aren't really a particularly are good trade-off versus equities. They're like a good complement to equities, but their annuities are a great trade-off versus bonds. So essentially the big sort of first decision is, all right, what asset do you take out, right? Or at least largely substitute for the annuity. And it's generally bonds. So the analysis that we did with CanX essentially shows what is the performance of the Alex income strategy, that it's based on a glide path that was inspired by, a very large name brand based in Pennsylvania. And we substituted in our version, our simple fixed deferred annuities. Think of it as like a MYGA, right? Every year the crediting rate resets, so it limits the credit risk, or should I say not the credit risk, but the duration risk for the carrier, which we thought was very important.
Okay, so maybe stop there. So if I'm a carrier in your plan, do I end up, if you've been putting money in for 10 years, for me as a carrier, does it look like I basically sold 10, annuities to you? Is that how I'm tracking it, or is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're getting premium every year, every month from a number of different people.
Okay.
I think it's important to understand before we get into our specific product. What we did was, we know that target date funds are where the money is, and 3.97 trillion out of the 9 trillion in 401k is in target date funds. 60 cents of every dollar is going into target dates automatically. And so target dates has this, glide path based on age. There are almost 200 different target date funds in 401k, but they're all very similar in reality. Our approach was, if we're going to add in guaranteed income, how do you do it? And so we looked at the marketplace and we said there's four main different strategies. One, invest in the target date fund, enroll your fixed income money into a SPIA at age 65. That's the base case. That's the reference. Two, you have a target date fund and you start rolling money into a fixed index annuity with a living benefit at a certain age. That's like a product that's in the market. That's two. Three, you have a target date fund and then you apply a 4% systematic withdrawal at retirement. That's the third. The fourth is you have a target date fund that where you have a VA type guarantee that starts wrapping around the entire target date fund at an age like 48. And then you have a 5% or something withdrawal for life. And the last is our version, and there's a couple of other major firms that have something like that. Is more of a deferred style product, where in our big idea was you take all of the fixed income money that was in the target date fund and you buy this type of annuity. And your allocation, and you're adding money every year, and it's got book value. And there's a couple other products like that in the market. We like them, and they're actually doing very well. And then the question is, compare all of these with the same glide path so we can really see what the annuity and the structure of the way it's added in is doing. And that's the basis for building a product. Instead of, like in the electric car world, General Motors takes a GM car and they say, we're going to rebuild it with the electric motor. Tesla says, we're going to build an electric car from the ground up that works exactly the way we want it. That's our approach. Start from the ground up and figure out what is the best way to build it.
Okay.
And it's analytic based.
Okay, this is good, but now I'm going to go a little bit in the weeds, just because I've had a little too much experience with some of these partnerships and how those things work. So if I say yes, I'm going down this target date fund. Okay, if I don't want to be a fund provider, I'm sure a lot of these carriers don't. Are they partnering then with a fund provider, a target date fund provider? Is that the path I would take?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and it's important to do that for two reasons. One is a good target date fund partner is going to have economies of scale. So like they're going to be able to provide that part of the product platform economically. And the other thing that's very important is that there was a time when insurance companies played a central role as the default, through GICs and stable value funds in 401ks. That's no longer the case. It's very much asset managers who, precisely because the defaults are now these target date funds, they're the ones that tend to have the more fluid relationships with the decision makers at a lot of the plan sponsors. So short answer is yes, unless you're one of the few carriers that also has like a robust asset management and record keeping. And there are a few that actually have like a lot of the pieces of the puzzle, but most don't, right? You're more than likely going to want to partner with a name brand asset manager that again provides economies of scale in the service itself, but also has a lot of the existing relationships.
Okay, so now I've been on the other end of the table where we're selling products and pulling in funds, whether it's on the VA side or we're putting indices in here. And I've been on the situation where we're pulling them out, we're changing them. So how do the tables turn? How does it feel to be a carrier in this situation where I'm a product inside a fund? If the fund decides, Paul, this is great. We got, get out the door for 2 years. I used your brand name. Now I've bid out the contract and somebody else gets the annuity. Now, can the target date fund do that? Or is this like linked in with the plan? Maybe help me understand what the arrangements look like.
So this is perhaps like one of the very most important questions, right? It comes down to, do you want to be an architect of your destiny, or do you want to essentially be a vendor?
Yes.
And so this is the key thing, is my point before about the fact that you want to work with big carriers, because carriers kind of own the relationships. And I should say, sorry, asset managers own the relationships. Asset managers own the relationships. Carriers have kind of been sidelined. So this is a once in a generation opportunity. And we were featured in in an article in the Retirement Income Journal. This is one of sort of the lead quotes from us. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity for carriers to reestablish themselves in 401ks. And essentially, a way to put it bluntly is you want to be the one sending out the RFPs instead of receiving them in an ideal world, right? You have greater control over the economics. You have greater control over creating a platform that actually plays to your strengths as a carrier. So the big thing is that carriers have to decide that they're comfortable with taking a more leadership role in this space. And that's honestly been one of the challenges as we go through all of these conversations, that many carriers are quite content to just sort of wait to get the RFP. And we think that's not, the best solution for the industry in the long run.
Right. The asset managers, the big guys, the BlackRock, State Streets, Nuveen, they're leading. Carriers are following, although there's a number of carriers that have products in the space. We think carriers need representation. Obviously, we know who could provide it, to help them design the product and go get the other component pieces and go to market with this. Let's go back to the analysis, the CanEx, because that's the linchpin of our whole sort of firm.
Absolutely.
Can you explain what it is?
Please.
So, again, we're product development guys. We have combined 50 plus years on Wall Street helping insurance carriers develop annuities, structured products, et cetera, hedging. So we looked at this and we said, we'll take one target date fund glide path from a well-known brand and apply these different ways to add in the annuity. One, the SPIA at retirement, which you can do in the retail market, or there's two products in the in-plan market. One, 4% systematic withdrawal with your money in retirement. Then a VA type guarantee that wraps around your target date fund. And there's two products in the 401k market that offer that. And the last was a fixed index annuity that you would start allocating to that has a living benefit. Again, similar to a product that's in the market. So what we wanted to know is we take all of those, we did it ourselves, build a model, do a Monte Carlo simulation, and see a couple things. Those 5 things, what gives you the most income in retirement? Because we're really, at the end of the day, we're trying to recreate defined benefit for people inside their 401k plan. 2, what has the most accumulation at age 65, right? Does it hurt you to have allocate to the annuity in terms of the money that you're going to have compared to if you didn't do anything? The other big thing was, volatility. And what happens if there's a 2008 or 2022 when the market went down and target date funds went down 30% in 08, 20% in 22? What if that happens right before you retire or 10 years after you retire? And the last thing is, if you have, you're in retirement, you have some money in the annuity that's making steady payments and the rest of your money still in this target date fund, what's the likelihood of running out of that rest of your money, which we call ruin? And so that's what we did. And you have to read the white paper. It gets pretty complex. But what we found is no disadvantage towards allocating money into the annuity during the accumulation. It actually outperformed we outperform or tie just the regular target date by having this type of deferred annuity in, but 97% of the time.
Interesting.
Because we're protected when those big downturns occur.
Right.
So that's
Graham, but specify why, those downturns are so devastating. It's not just equities that are down, right?
Well, that's the thing. And the type of annuity that we're recommending, which is a flexible premium deferred annuity, and there's others like that in the market. We've not invented anything new. It's all existing generic stuff. What happened in 2008 and 2022, equities went down and fixed income went down as well. So if you're in a target date fund and you're 63 years old and it's 2008 and equities went down like 60%, but bonds went down 20% as well. So your target date fund goes down 30% and you have not recovered by the time you hit age 65 and you need to start withdrawing. But with our type of annuity, it's got book value. So we've replaced the entire fixed income portion of the target date fund with this annuity. So yes, equities went down 50 or 60%, but fixed income went down 0 in our product. And so that protects your account value, but also you're getting more income in retirement because of that.
Yeah.
And so that's the real kicker. As to why it works. And here's an adage that from people with 50 plus combined years of experience on Wall Street. The 1 in 100 year event happens every 7 to 8 to 10 years. So if you're 40 and you have your money in your 401k, the chance of a 2008, 2022 happening before you retire, it's probably going to happen once or twice.
Right.
And the mathematics bear that out in our analysis.
Yeah, well, I lived through this whole low volatility index strategy, and it works until your assumptions change. So I guess if I were to stress test your solution and the recommendation for the carriers, I mean, when does it fail? Like what type of a market? I don't know. I'll put you on the spot. We haven't talked about this question, but like, when would you not recommend a carrier do it this target date fund strategy? And I guess, Graham, is there any scenario where you could say, you know what, putting this annuity, it failed? I don't know. Are there?
We would our design and this idea of putting a deferred product into a target date fund would underperform in the scenario that we've just lived through, an equity bull market where equities are up 700%.
Right.
And even though interest rates are higher now, we've lived in a fixed income bull market for 40 years. People don't think of it that way because rates are 4.5%, but I remember 18%.
Yeah.
So we've had an incredible bull run. The market for target date funds, the market backdrop has been extraordinary. Equities are going up. We had a correction in 2022. Fixed income rates corrected in 2022, but generally we're multiples in valuation above where we were. That's an environment where you're best off in a target date fund that has 90% of your money in NVIDIA and 10% in total rate of return bond.
Sounds like my portfolio.
Yeah. The market where I think we outperform is more of a stagflationary market. If we went back to the 70s where rates were steadily rising and equity performance was so-so, the annuity with book value would really outperform.
Okay.
So just the key thing here is that like our strategy outperforms in the preponderance of scenarios. So remember, I said Monte Carlo analysis, 1,000 different scenarios. We're outperforming sort of 75+% of the time in so many of these different sort of like measures we're doing. But the scenarios we're outperforming are the downside scenarios. That's where you need outperformance most, is when things are going poorly. So when if everything is going to the moon, because working with our platform, you're actually essentially buying some protection. You're not going to participate in exactly the same extreme upside, but you're still going to do extraordinarily well because assets you own are going to be improving in value. So that was very important for us because going back to your question about plan sponsors, this is a very litigious area. So plan sponsors get lawsuits for all sorts of things. Some are logical, some honestly seem a lot less logical, but there is a lot of litigation. And so, we thought it made sense to focus on, if you have to make choices on trade-offs, on risks and rewards, we thought that the best place to create the fortress was around the downside scenarios.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, I know we're right sort of at the end of the time. I guess, Ramsey, same question I'd ask, but that I asked Graham on the company side, and I can't remember who said this, but you don't really have you don't really have a strategy until you can say no to something. What type of carrier would you say, listen, if you're this, and this, don't do the target fund, stick with your VA-like thing or your FIA-like thing? Are there scenarios where you say, yeah, it probably makes sense to do that, as opposed to what looks like the rationally best choice given everything we know today?
Well, every carrier that's in the life and annuity business is not in runoff. So if you're going concern, you're writing new business, every carrier should be able to write the Alex income version of an annuity, a simple fixed deferred with an annual credit reset. Like everybody should be able to write it. So we've created something that everybody can write. If you are a carrier that already has a very strong credit rating, perfect, right? That's ultimately going to be a factor in your getting selected when you go to plan sponsors. If you're a carrier that is that has a decent rating and is looking to continue to grow and improve. And there's a lot of these. There's a lot of like sort of carriers that have been formed out of, organically or through acquisition in the last 4, 5, 6, 7 years.Maybe they're B++, maybe they're A-, but they're on this constant track to improvement. Then this is going to be a great market for you if you set yourself up to be ready for it. And oh, by the way, it's a higher quality business in terms of capital efficiency. We haven't really touched on that a lot, but it should be more profitable, should be less risky and more capital efficient than the retail business for a variety of reasons. And that should be that should contribute. That should be a part of a virtuous cycle. Like adding another business helps your credit rating. Adding another business is more efficient, helps even more. If your credit rating improves, right, you're going to be able to get more business, including from plan sponsors. So we think that for those that are aspirational in this space, we think this should be super, super important for them.
One other thing that's really, we think is wonderful, we're trying to make annuity distribution like auto insurance, where we give everybody one through their 401k plan. The premium flows and surrenders is not a function of rates or the latest product design. It's a function of employment levels and salary and how much people are contributing to their 401ks. Surrender really only happens if somebody switches from the default in their 401k to another investment, which doesn't happen that much. So you get this steady flow, which is so much better. In the auto insurance world, if Warren Buffett has an incredible investment year, Geico doesn't change its auto insurance rates. They don't have to. They just keep doing what they're doing. I'd like annuities to be like that, where you don't have to change crediting and crank it up a lot to get those flows this year because you had a lot of surrender. I'd like it steady. And we think this is the way to distribute it to get that.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
This was
think about not having the 1035 every 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah. No, listen, I think it's a great paper. We'll put a link to it. And I think, a lot of companies that are looking at this should read this. It's a good way to. I think you've done both of you done a great job, kind of laying out some options and choices that companies are going to have to make. And I think you've got a good recommendation. So, Ramsey, what's the best place for people to find you or connect with you if they want to learn more?
I would say, right now, reach out to us. Reach out to us on LinkedIn. We'll put the link to the CanX report on the site for the podcast. So click through and look at that.
We have a website.
We do have a website. We continue to sort of expand that. We're going to be adding more content over time, but it's a great landing page to sort of find where we are in our latest. And we'd love to chat to people that are very serious about this space.
Okay, great. Graham, thanks for coming.
Thank
Ramsey,
you.
Good to be on the other side of the table here. And
always.
Listen, I want to thank our listeners. Be sure to recommend us, write reviews, and most importantly, join us next week for another great episode of That Annuity Show. Thanks.
Nassau Financial Group is always working harder to be your carrier of choice. We build products that help protect people's savings and are dedicated to providing you with best-in-class service. We seek to keep things simple and have your back in the years to come. Nassau is headquartered in Hartford, Connecticut. Learn more at nfg.com.
Zinnia, an Eldridge Industries business, simplifies insurance. It delivers comprehensive solutions for the industry's most critical needs and creates the modern rails of the insurance industry. To learn more about Zinnia, please visit zinnia.com.